Welcome back to another ISNAV story. Today we are with Professor Giorgio Bellettini, Honorary Professor of Physics at University of Pisa, guest scientist at the Fermi National Accelerator Lab, also known as Fermilab, and one of ISNAV original founders and the honorary board member. Benvenuto.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Professor Giorgio Bellettini has made experiments in particle physics at the Italian National Lab of Frascati, where he was also director, at CERN and the Fermilab. Among the many important results of his work is the discovery of the top quark, the heaviest known elementary particle. Particle physics is not an easy subject. So I thought that the viewers that are interested in learning about the life work in physics of Giorgio will find the conversation in the video mentioned here below in the video comments super interesting. Instead, for this conversation, I would like to concentrate on other aspects of your important legacy, Giorgio, such as a deep commitment in international collaborations, in training students, bringing Italy and its culture to North America, and of course, ISNAV. I hope that's okay.
You are touching me on the weak point, because this is my mania. I like terribly much to collaborate with the people, and I consider the entire Earth my unique home. And in fact, the students are my children all the time. Since when I was young, and I was a student myself, I was considering the other students my pupils.
Perfect. That's great. So let's start with big collaborations then, especially between American and Italian physicists. The Collider Detector at Fermilab, the world's former highest energy particle accelerator, was born as a three-nation endeavor, USA, Japan, and Italy. You said at a certain point there were more than 50 Italian physicists there, all very respected and admired, and you call it the Italian factor at Fermilab. Can you tell us more about it, your role in it, and what made that international collaboration such a success?
I believe the Italian style, the Italian temper, the Italian feelings, which are so friendly and open-minded, helped a lot to create the correct relationship. Actually, my first collaboration with Americans started when I was just a young laureate doctor, 23 years old, and I was employed in Rome, and I went to live with a new young physicist like I was, who was an Italian, and he was found in the south of Italy, in Sicily, as I was found in Pisa by a professor of Rome who wanted who had some open positions at the university, and he wanted to find some young guys who were not available apparently at that particular point in time. So he toured Italy, went to Sicily, went to northern Italy, to Pisa, and eventually he made an offer to me and to the other guy. The other guy spent with us 6 months. Actually, we lived together close to the University of Rome for 6 months, and then he went to America, started working in New York, and he became a professor there, and he is now retired. But he did an excellent career in America. And since we were so friendly as new physicists, when I started my important experiment at CERN later on, a few years later, I wanted to have a collaborator. It is, incidentally, this is important at CERN. Groups should not propose an experiment without collaborators anyway. So I decided to send a letter to him and say that his name is Guido Finocchiaro. I said, Guido, would you like to come back and do an experiment together with me? He accepted immediately. And so at that point, my first more important experiment was a Pisa Stony Brook collaborative experiment at CERN. And so since then, I always said, later I had another collaborative experiment with Sam Ting again at the CERN ISR after the end of these first works with Guido. And so the idea of collaboration in general, and in particular with America, started with my own profession. And so this was a success because I felt really right at home. It was something I don't know if this is typical of the American scientists or physicists, but certainly of my own temper. It is a fact that I went on very, very well all the time with American physicists.
And do you think anything has changed these days? I mean, what's the status of this collaboration? We're talking about the Fermilab today. I mean, has anything changed more recently?
I hope it's not. But in fact, this is a concern because you see, since 2011, which is long ago, actually, over 10 years ago, CDF, the large experiment that we did at the Tevatron, is over, and the results are basically have already come out, all of them. And so the large community, which was that you mentioned, many physicists at the same time running like rabbits in the Fermilab cafeteria, were not there anymore. And so you cannot predict, and the other interests of their experiments became the important ones of the laboratory. And so my concern was, again, this beautiful feeling that what I call the Italian temper, the Italian style, that perhaps was there. Perhaps I was basically inventing it or seeing it myself. Anyway, that feeling, I thought it was important. It was a style of the laboratory, and I wanted to preserve it. And my concern is, at some point, even now, how can one preserve it when such a dominating experiment like CDF was is over, and people have turned into other experiments. Many Italians are still there. They work on the muon experiments, and so mu2e, G-2, there are strong Italian contingents there. But they are separate, they think to their own interests, they are not dominated by the PISA group anymore. And so I felt
maybe
like
it was the Giorgio factor, not just the Italian factor.
Yeah, I believe it was. I think it was. In fact, I was always feeling like sort of a family, a person in charge and responsible for the goodwill and good profit of the family, right?
Tell us about an initiative, Summer Stages, that you started to bring Italian students to Fermilab every summer.
Again, all the time I was careful with the students. I like the idea to have students around, to grow them at all time, even when I was myself a student. Later on, even more. So when we started the CDF, basically in 1982, we started working in 81. We approved the experiment in 81. In 82, we started working at building detectors and installing something at Fermilab. They always wanted to take students with me. Now, you need a passport, of course, but you also need a status, which is not so obvious. You have to be approved by some university to be officially part of a group and so on. So at that point, we did not have special funds for visitors. We had funds for ourselves, members of the experimental group who had money for themselves. But the problem of having students around was somehow difficult to solve if it appeared. So what I started at that time, I started taking around students, proposing to them to get their laureate degree with me, or somehow with others of the group, and saying, we'll find the money to take you to Fermilab. And the money was found with a lot of long list of tricks, legal, accepted by the chair or by the president of INFN. But it was quite impressive because we were used to host the students at Fermilab in homes at the village, rented by ourselves, except that we were one person and we had the 4 beds, and the 4 beds were full, but we did not literally need 4 beds for ourselves. I remember one year, which was particularly difficult. I was renting an apartment at Fermilab, 4 apartments, three, not 4, 3 apartments under my name. I had to be also there. I had 3 apartments. Now, these things, of course, were visible and not emphasized, but were visible and accepted by NFN. Incidentally, at that time, I don't know now, but at that time, NFN was a new, young institute. What was important was to have the people enthusiastic and to sit and work hard and work for the success of their experiments. From that point of view, we were unbeatable. And so at some point, I had actually, I remember a year which was in some 20 years after the start. This started in 83. In 2004, again, we had students coming from various Italian groups collaborating in CDF. We had people to support, certainly for traveling problem. We had to somehow to get the tickets paid for them under different motivation. At the very end, it was something, remember, that time the budget, the estimated budget was around $70,000 in that year. There was no way for us to be able to save that money. And so I called my president and said, look, this is what I did until now. Money was spent formally in a correct way. Certainly people were ready to work hard, but now it is impossible. I need a special fund, a national program to support students. And so the thing was taken very seriously. And in that same year, I think it was 2003, there was since a while a meeting of the board of Italian-American board to discuss the ongoing collaborators between the two countries, the 2 institutes actually, INFN and DOE. And at that meeting, the Italian delegation proposed to create a student exchange program, according to which in Italy we would find money and support, and of course, propose nice program for American students, and the same would be done in this country by DOE for Italian students. That was approved, and we started immediately to fund 5 students yearly each country. Those 5 students became 20, 25 immediately. Wow. But that created created support again, because you have 5 students, you can need 5 homes. In 5 homes, you host 20 people, as long as they accept it. So that is how it was born. And since then, we always had many students, and it is actually something which continues now, because on the line of this attitude, it was again in the years 2000, 2005, I created a cultural association that I called the Cultural Association of Italians at Fermilab, the AIF, with the idea of spreading the Italian culture, which was more. It was the Italian feelings, the Italian style, the Italian style of being together. When you are even at the work, you are not a foreigner, you are a friend among friends. So that association was created, and because of that, of course, I could get more money and funds directly for the association. The association is still very, very valid and alive today. And
so today there are still both the summer stages and association are still going on. Both
absolutely,
of them. I see.
Absolutely. The association, since a while, since when this collaboration between DOE and Italian, the INFN was created, we did not have any more basically the problem of supporting the students. And the association moved, remained very active, but changed we changed our programs, so our events. And we had a number of important events like musical events, singers or instruments, mostly classical music. So I had the permission. I was officially accepted as a guest. The association was officially accepted as a guest at the lab, and we had the use of the main auditorium, and we ran a number of events under the control of the police, and which would direct the public, and so we had a number of important Italian artists coming. Even that it was not so difficult because Italian artists to come to America is a big country, so nice people like to go there. So we have touring a number of artists, of groups of artists touring the United States regularly every summer. They do that with the help of the Italian Cultural Institutes, who are there in 4 or 5 important American universities. This one in Chicago, this one in Los Angeles, of course, in New York. And so with the help of these, of course, at that point, I became friendly with the Italian consul in Chicago. And so he helped me and informed me when there was some group that could possibly be of my interest. You know already the guests, the feelings that I shared, and he would pay for much, not everything. He would pay for stay of these people to Chicago because they were going to Chicago to present their show. They would stay 2 or 3 more days, who cares? I would cover, the association would cover the cost for their coming for 1 day, 1 night, or certainly coming to Fermilab to give the show. And so we have been able to continue on that.
In a previous DISNAV story, another physicist, Claudio Pellegrini, said that we need to bridge the gap between the scientific and humanistic cultures, and that one step in that direction could be connecting the classical Italian-American community in North America with the scientists from Italy. And in talking about CAIF, you said that the parallel motivation was to get involved in non-scientific Italian-American community of Chicago, the Little Italy of Chicago. So what do you think will be the value of stronger ties between these communities, the classical native Italian American in North America and the scientists from Italy?
This was a point that I felt personally as my feelings, right? I went to visit Little Italy in Chicago, and I saw all these various shops which were funded and run by former Italians. And I noticed that that was an Italian, so say Italian heritage, but there was nothing much reflecting the Italy of today. Their original roots were in somehow poor families, limited scope jobs, and they have found, of course, very well their soil in Chicago, but not to care about the cultural institute of the town. They were working hard, and they were running their little restaurants, and somehow there was an entire area of the town that looked Italian if you looked at the people around, but if you listened to the content of the conversation and you were informed of the type of life they did, there was very little in common with Italy today. Italy has changed enormously, of course. And they did not know that Italy was so modern and so active. And people were also so educated that they could be appreciated in the United States as well. So I had a number of, I went there, and I went to see the publisher of the local newspaper. I don't remember now the name. There is an Italian journal newspaper in Italy, and so I advertised the possibility of doing some, coming to Fermilab. For example, they did not really know that they could come to this nuclear center in Chicago. Wow. Certainly you can, you're welcome. Just you just tell me if you need, but certainly you just come and visit an event, to take part in an event. So we had a number of events, again at the laboratory, which were done with some delegation, some contingent of Italians, former Italians, living in the so-called Little Italy area of Chicago. I must say that was nice. They reacted in interest because they were also pleased by the fact that some scientists away from their, so far away from their normal life could take care to come to Little Italy, look for the local Italian newspaper, and tell them about the University of the nuclear centers and all this story of collaborating with the American scientists. They said, okay, fine, who is this guy? But they weren't pleased by that. But the point is that in order to, it could continue, but in order to become solid and permanent, to become a habit, you need work, time, and several people interested in merging these two communities.
Let's talk about ISNAF. You are one of the original founders and honorary board member. How and why did you become involved?
I was involved because my cultural association was much older than ISNAF. So ISNAF was started this century. But I had a colleague, Giorgio Einaudi, who was an Italian professor who moved to the US and spent several years as a scientific attaché in this country, in particular in Chicago, in New Washington. And so he was the initiator of ISNAF. I don't think I did anything at the start. However, he approached me when he wanted to create this pool, this network in the US of former Italians. He came to, and he had no physicist. He came one day to me and said, Giorgio, I would like to create a solid network of Italians working in this country on science, arts, music, culture, anything. And I have a number of people, and I met all of them, and I basically am creating by now a significant board of directors, but there is no physicist. And how is it possible? Would you like to? You have this association. You come from Pisa. Would you like to? Oh, of course I would. And so it was not born by the initiative of Giorgio, and now I'm not doing much at all, but I'm very happy to make everybody know, once it's possible and appropriate, that Kaif is a member of ISNAF.
It's the local chapter of Chicago. What do you think ISNAF main role should be from now on?
I can put myself and answer different questions. What would you, George, do in order to help ISNAF to grow and be productive of real Italian style and interest and friendship in this country, what would you do? And my answer would be, let's work on the young people. They are, in general, they are better than we are. You are young, so you are one of the bad ones, the good ones, but certainly better than me. Oh yeah, and so you need a number of young people. In fact, there are some. For example, this young Alessandro that you know well by now, Ratti. Do you know him? I never.
Yeah.
I wonder if I ever, once you see him, ask him. But did you ever meet Giorgio? I'm not so sure that I ever met him. You need a number of young people.
Yeah, he's great. We're not that young, but thank you. Some more personal questions, if you don't mind. I read that you moved to the States when you were already 46 years old. So how hard was such a change at that age? But also, what were the advantages instead?
There was no change, actually, because I have been using to do experiments abroad. And going from Italy to CERN and living there for years, or coming here, well, it was not a big difference. Again, I found the laboratory was open to friends. Fermilab was a nice resort when I started. They wanted me to start horse riding. They were helping me to play tennis. So I'm told that now these things are becoming more difficult, and even the horse barn is not there anymore. But is it? Perhaps it was a mistake, but I'm not responsible. I even once I wrote a letter advocating that this would not happen, but it has happened. So anyway, what I would advise for the success of business is to push and facilitate the activity run by the young people, because things change so much. Even now, even working with you and getting this conversation on the scope organized, it was a little difficult with me. This I learned eventually, but now I use the computer for so many intrigued functions that I get exhausted. People, I see my daughter, they come here and and solves all my problems. See, but she is different from me, because basically because he's much younger. Young people are better than the older. So my idea is push and help young people. I can help with young people just with advice or support them, but not really a contribution, a direct personal contribution, because they are so much better than I am.
They are young. Can you talk about your life and work now? I mean, I believe you live between Pisa and Chicago. Is that correct? So how do you handle that?
In the last year, the last years have been all perturbed by the pandemic, of course. So I've been spending many months in Chicago, in the Fermilab actually, many months here. In the past, I was used to commute very frequently, 4 or 5 times per year, horse and back from Fermilab and Pisa. But now, I don't know. Last year it was once per year. Now I'm planning to go in America again, in the US, twice per year, hopefully, and stay a few months. But it is difficult. It is difficult. So we shall see what we can do. It was not difficult to get used to it, because of the it was consistent, if you want. My personal style with the attitude of the laboratory. Bob Wilson, he died before you were born. I don't know. You never know. The old director, you never met the old Fermilab director. The famous founder of Fermilab was a Western guy. Again, he was used to ride horses. He was very not formal, ready to push and go. And And so the laboratory wanted to have a laboratory which was basically a large soil area, land area, with food, with rivers possibly, not actually, lakes and woods and open fields for the people to go and live. And in fact, Fermilab, even now it is a very open area, but nothing to do with CERN, for example, even Brookhaven. You don't have a crowded area of of skyscrapers here, not at all. But at that time, it was just rabbits all the time around, the Canadian geese and horses running, and people were interested in working hard, of course. But after that, they felt in contact with the nature. So now that is probably in as much as it is possible and acceptable with the temper of the people, because even the taste of the people change so much with time. I believe that it would still be possible to find a contingent of young people who would like to restore the horse barn here and go riding in the country.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
The Italians would certainly do that. The Italians, but even that could something that you propose it, you announce it, and you have no attendees.
All Italian movies in a barn. That would be great.
Oh,
is there anything that we
had that? Do you know?
Oh, you had that.
Okay,
that. Here you go.
Oh, we did that, of course.
Of course. Yeah. Before we finish, is there anything that we haven't covered you would like to share with the ISNAV community? Anything else?
Help CS. Alessandro has the right attitude. Perhaps you can do that. Try to keep in touch with the Italians, with the scientists coming to Fermilab. They are certainly ready to seize your pressures, because the temper is what it is. So they are not going to hide themselves in a laboratory and refuse going out in the open air with American friends. But if they are not approached, if they are alone, and if the system doesn't help them, they might, of course, not be really a good way of contact. But if you want to invest on the Italians, you will see that we'll have again a very friendly community with you. You are American. Are you American? Certainly, you have American passport.
Yeah, both. It's convenient.
Both.
Yeah, it's convenient. Well, grazie mille, Giorgio.
Sorry if you talk too much.
No, absolutely. It was great. Thank you so much. Grazie.